Thank you so much for joining us, President Spoljaric. And China has the highest number of recipients of the 49th Florence Nightingale Award. And how do you see China's role and contribution to international humanitarian causes?
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here in Beijing. And it was an even greater pleasure yesterday to attend the award ceremony and to congratulate the women nurses who were granted the awards. It made me realize how deeply rooted the nursing profession is in the society of China and how important it is. It also explains the value and the position of public health in the country.
What are the biggest challenges now, especially for ICRC, to provide humanitarian assistance across the globe? And what's the need most acute?
We live in a time where humanitarian pressures are growing at an accelerated pace, very much also reinforced by the direct impacts of climate change. But what you also see is a rising number of conflicts. So where a couple of decades ago there were 30 armed conflicts across the globe, today we are dealing with 100 situations of armed conflict. And this comes at the time of shrinking resources. So we are forced to prioritize and to look more carefully in the future how we operate and what we do, where we do what, and we will certainly have to do more with less in the future.
You've been to the front line of the Ukraine and Russia conflict, and you've been outspoken against the use of explosive weapons against civilians in war. So why this is an issue that you bring so much attention to?
These weapons are increasing the cost of war. Massive destruction of civilian infrastructure makes it much harder for societies affected by armed violence to return to a functioning economic system, to return to a functioning society where people can, look after themselves. This is also the reason and that these arms are not allowed in specific circumstances, and some of them are not allowed at all. My responsibility as the president of the International Committee of the Red Cross is to remind all the states that in 1949 they have signed a package of treaties that prevent parties to an armed conflict, parties to international armed conflicts in particular, from harming civilians over and above what can be avoided.
We met with Chinese President Xi Jinping, as you mentioned earlier, and he mentioned the few initiatives that he proposed, including the Belt and Road Initiative as well as the Global Civilization Initiative. How do you see this initiative contribute to global governance as well as to humanitarian assist?
Development without peace, no peace without development, and humanitarian assistance is the pillar that comes between the two, trying to assist and preserve the provision of critical services from collapsing in times of armed conflict. So given that a lot of situations where we work in are situations along the Belt and Road Initiative, this is again an area where there is a potential in mutually informing each other and discussing how these different roles can reinforce each other, serving the people in need and bringing to the people what they need in situations of armed conflict. I think in the future we can discuss how we can mutually benefit from each other's experience and how we can also further support the health team that is working abroad, the Chinese health team, working in situations of conflict, how they can also benefit in the future from our knowledge and our training going forward.
Earlier in this year, I believe it's February, the ICRC and also the Red Cross Society of China has signed a memorandum of cooperation for the next 5 years. And can you expand on that a little bit?
Let me start by saying that the cooperation between the ICRC and the national societies in general is an important priority for me. And I'm very pleased that we have been able to renew our cooperation agreement earlier this year. And there was an immediate opportunity to connect during the earthquake in Turkey and northern Syria, where the president of the Red Cross Society of China was one of the first ones to contact me and to offer support and cooperation in these first very difficult days, which I greatly appreciated. So I was happy to come and to have this structured exchange now with the leadership of the Red Cross Society of China, and we will continue these conversations in looking at how we can deepen our cooperation in the promotion of international humanitarian law globally, but also how we can better coordinate our international engagements in the future.
I'm just wondering, what's your advice to the younger generation who wants to dedicate themselves into the humanitarian assistance and also humanitarian aid?
I would certainly recommend to each and everyone to familiarize themselves, you know, and in today's world where social media and other means of communication allow us to be connected across regions and across countries, young people certainly have the opportunity to connect with other young people who live in situations in armed conflict and understand their situation, you know, become an advocate also for their situation. And then of course, you know, familiarize yourself with international humanitarian law, because this is our constitution. You need to know the rules of war, and preventing war starts in peacetime, and preventing war starts in peacetime when you know and learn the rules in peacetime, because then if a conflict breaks out, you know what is allowed and what not. I wish everybody in the world knew that attacks against hospitals, no matter what, no matter how complex the situation, are not allowed. It is not correct, it is not acceptable that infrastructure that is there to provide services to civilian populations that they need to survive are systematically the object of the deployment of arms.